trucking, gonna stand up. Rep the Midwest, get it hype. This the ramp up. Hey, the ramp up. Never hit the brakes. Break it down day to day. Show the people what it takes. The ramp up, the ramp up.
Welcome to episode 5 of The Ramp Up. I'm your host, Rich Cruel. It's my co-host, Bryan Rakowski, co-founder as well. We founded Hoplite Logistics, talking about our experience growing a brokerage from the ground up, growing a business from the ground up. Some of the stuff's related to freight, some of the stuff's not. Today, we're talking tech stack. Very big in our industry, obviously. Your partners can determine your future. We didn't take this decision lightly for anyone that we brought in. We did make some mistakes. We'll talk about those. But we just got back from Manifest, and tech was obviously a very important thing there. There are a lot of companies focused on that we were able to chat with. So what were your kind of takeaways, man? We spoke to a lot of new companies with new features. What do you think out there?
It was really cool. The amount of attendees jumped up to like 6,500. I want to say it was, what was it before that? Maybe 4,000. So there's a lot more people.
It was 3 to 45 or 5 to 65. So it's just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it just seemed that much bigger. A lot of people coming from outside the industry. We had, I don't know how many people approach us and say, you know, we went to Stanford or some Ivy League school and we built AI models, machine learning models, and had some cool ideas and products at the time, and seeing the need in supply chain and just jumping over here and asking a lot of questions and trying to figure out where they live in that space and where they could provide some value, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. Like you said, you talk about some really educated people from some prestigious institutions, and they don't necessarily know where they fit in yet, but they know that there's money to be made. There's needs all across the industry. I don't want to say like freight's antiquated by any means. The last 10 years or so, there's been a lot of developments. I would say, especially over the last few years, you see some awesome companies coming out. But it was kind of funny how many conversations we had where like, we would just like to pick your brain to kind of know what product they want to build. That's new to me. I don't know. It was interesting for sure.
Yeah, I think in the brokerage space, they're kind of leaving out the fact that they really need to understand how relationship driven it is, but also how kind of fragmented a lot of the tech is across a broker, a carrier, a shipper. And then we have our own language too that we kind of use. And they kind of thought, some of those guys were like, yeah, well, we can use our machine learning tools to help us understand the definitions of these words. And like, oh, that's cool. But you really need to spend time getting to understand our industry if you want to make an impact.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that because there's no shortage of machine learning AI being introduced into supply chain products. But yeah, we'll kind of jump down and get into this. We're talking about our tech stack, kind of what our thought process was as we built this out. The first thing we needed was, and this was new to us, but was a human resources platform for onboarding, for payroll, for just where all your documentation lives. And, we'd worked at some larger scale brokerages in the past and been introduced to like ADP or AltiPro, and didn't have a great experience on that myself. So I think we were looking for something a little newer, a little more easy to operate. And we had landed on Rippling, which there's some pros and cons to it, but I think generally it does a little bit of everything that we need.
It was an incredibly useful, especially early on when it's just you and I, and we're doing everything in the back office, and having something where you can easily onboard a new employee rather quickly and have all of the benefits lived right within the system, signing a contract, managing spend, managing PTO, vacations. I mean, it's incredibly robust system, but really helpful. I mean, big time saver for us.
Yeah, they have so much stuff built out. I mean, it's one of those systems, and there's a few that we have in our arsenal, but it's so robust that half the time you don't know where to start. So you spend 10 minutes looking into how to do something in their knowledge base, and then you can easily find it. I will say, the chat bots or getting in touch with someone's not necessarily extremely hard, but yeah, there's just so much capability there. It's been a good feature for us, and it's been a good feature for us because something I didn't have a lot of background with. I think we were Googling what is a PEO when we first started this. Like, yeah, for where we're at, we wanted to hire people the best people for the job, regardless of where they're at to start. And being compliant in every state or country, that's a big undertaking. Like if we're hiring people in Minnesota, California, Illinois, Michigan, Kansas, um, every state has different regulations, and I think that's something that we maybe had overlooked when we came into this. And having a PEO that can really make sure that you're doing everything the right way, very important. And I'm glad we went that route. It's been good for us.
And for those that aren't familiar, it's more so from a tax perspective. Um, Having to set up with each Secretary of State in each state, but I mean, it goes beyond just tax. Obviously, it has a lot of compliance and regulations too, but that's some pretty complex stuff. I really don't know how people would handle that without like a PEO system. It just would be a ton of manual work.
Yeah. Also, the benefits. If you're, I want to say, just gonna not sure. This is a conversation we had over a year ago, but if you have 5 or more employees, the PEO really makes sense from a health benefits standpoint. So, if you want to provide health insurance for your employees, you're likely going to get better rates through a PEO. Until you get to X amount of employees, then it's going to make more sense to do it in house. But don't quote us on that. We're obviously not geniuses when it comes to this, but it's worked out really well for us, and it's been able to give our employees full benefits without, charging them an arm and a leg. So Rippling was a good one for us. We didn't want to take too much time on that, but if you're struggling for the same thing, that we highly recommend it. The next thing for us, obviously the big one, and I think if anyone's tuning in, they're probably going to want to hear our thoughts because we did a deep dive on this, is the TMS, the transportation management system, where all your loads live, where you're going to be operating, 100% of the day almost. We wanted to make sure that we landed, stuck the landing on this. And there's no shortage of options out there. There's small operations, there's big, huge TMSs. We demoed like 10 of them. And we originally started with a smaller operation that worked for us for a bit, but we eventually, our needs kind of exceeded what they were able to do. And so we started recently looking into some new TMSs, and we came away with thoughts on all of them. So I don't know if we want to just go one by one on the ones we demoed and give our thoughts and ultimately what we landed on. But our needs, and everyone's going to be a little bit different. You have a different operation, you have different needs and wants. Our needs were, we needed cross-border capability because that's a big part of what we do with Mexico and Canada. We definitely wanted some nice seamless integrations. Talk about all the different platforms out there that you're bringing in for different reasons. You want them to seamlessly integrate together. So the TMS is the biggest portion of that. You need everyone working in unison. Reporting scale, like we definitely wanted very in-depth reporting from, being able to run commissions, make sure the business health is okay. So that was a big one for us. Efficiencies just in general, like is there automation? Is there, can you do everything with a couple clicks instead of having to open up multiple windows and click around? That was a big thing for us. And then the last thing was just, it's a small thing, but something we didn't realize so many platforms don't have is, a lane history within a customer file or a carrier file. Can you quickly see what the history with this customer is, how you're buying, how did you quote recently for, the same lane a month ago if it's not contract? Like just having quick visibility was important for us.
Yeah, if you're a startup as well, then thinking about the back office, how much time does it take to approve bills, approve invoices, and kind of push that through your process of getting the checks and balances done? And does it integrate with QuickBooks or whatever backend software you're doing for bookkeeping? How does the data information flow? That all that stuff is, if you're an owner of a company, especially a startup, you really got to think about that stuff.
Yep. I'll just quickly start with one that we didn't necessarily do a full scale demo in, but we, spoiler alert, we went with Macropoint for our tracking provider. And Descartes does their own TMS for freight brokers, Alijex. We looked into that. It was very visually similar to the one we were already on. I think our thing was, we wanted something with a little more capability, not to downplay Alijex whatsoever, just wasn't a fit for us. I think we wanted something with a little more breadth, little larger scale. So, Alijex was a no for us. The second one we looked at was Alvys. Alvys is picking up a lot of steam, see a lot of their marketing on social media, especially on LinkedIn. They definitely had good cross-border capability, so I give them props on that. There's no lane history in the customer file. Again, we're like splitting hairs, but that was something that was important to us. Big thing for us though is, and another spoiler alert, like Highway is our onboarding and compliance platform. They didn't have a Highway integration. That was kind of a big no-no for us. They said that they could get the integration set up, but it was going to cost a fee. And so that just with everything else in general, we felt like this was not a fit for us. Do you have any thoughts on Alvys?
Not really. Kind of felt the same. I know aesthetics aren't like a huge thing, but it wasn't necessarily super aesthetically pleasing to me and when how you operate and move around. I think that's just part of getting used to a TMS, but just some of the functionality. I think we came from the world of Bazooka at Coyote where you had everything right in front of your face and it was really easy and quick to maneuver around and get to load history or see what the rate was on a lane and like quick functioning. I just didn't feel like it quite had what we're looking for in that realm.
Roserocket was another one it's been getting a lot of love. We definitely wanted to take a look at them. I thought some cool things with Roserocket was they had an AI data bot that would kind of automate your load building, which that seems to be a feature that more and more TMSs are embracing. You had an email come in, your TMS is connected, it'll build the load for you. I remember the audit function of Roserocket being extremely robust. Like every single thing done was showed up. So there's no way that any piece of data is not getting logged within that. It did support cross-border for us as well. And they didn't have any truck matching, which I'm now realizing with Bazooka, like you talked about, that is apparently not as common as you think, where you plug in a truck where it wants to pick up, where it wants to deliver, and then match it to all the loads available. That's a feature that only a handful had. And then I think there was this thought that carriers would interact directly with the platform quite a bit, and I wasn't as bullish on a carrier doing that. They got enough going on. They don't want to jump into a million different platforms. So those are just my high level thoughts on it. For us, they also didn't have a Highway integration, so that kind of brought them out from our perspective. Do you have any thoughts on Roserocket?
Yeah, I think just some of the partner integrations were kind of a little bit of issue for us.
Yeah, for our partners specifically, if they didn't have integration, it was going to be, we needed to get moving on a transition. So, 3 months of getting the integration set up was a non-starter. But I did remember thinking fondly about the platform in general, but again, just wasn't a fit for what we were trying to do. Next up was 3PL Systems. This was an older company. It's been around for over 20 years. They redid all their code, I believe in 2018. They call it version 2 now. We started getting into, and we're going kind of bottom up from what we liked the least to the most for what we were looking for. We started getting into the ones that have some of those like customized features at this point, because they had a branded website that I think is just a really professional look. If you're a brokerage and you want to provide like a customer portal or visibility, having a branded website for yourself, I think it takes that next level up. And so 3PL did have that. They had consolidation features for cross-border, which was a good thing for us. Aesthetically, the system looked a little old, but it had good new features. So I think that kind of goes back to them reinvesting into new tech, and they planned on having a lot more integrations in the near future. Had Power BI integrated, although I believe that was like $10 a month. And Greenscreens was also integrated, which was our pricing platform, but they didn't have a module, I want to say. So when we talk about us wanting the features to live within the platform, it didn't do it as well as some of the other options. So that's why 3PL was out with us. But overall, a lot of what you'd be looking for if you have a solid tech stack, because they're integrated with quite a bit of platforms out there.
I seem to recall some of the cross-border functionality just not being what we needed. Also from a reporting function too, we have to be able to report all our shipments that have a Mexico entity or Mexico carrier pulled to them, because that's some back office work that we have to do as well.
Yeah, the next one up was Revenova, Salesforce based. So tons of features on this. Revenova has some pretty high profile customers. I know Molo used them to build a hell of a brokerage, obviously. This had the breadth that we were looking for. I think aesthetically a little bit. It was kind of busy. There were so many features. I likened it to Bazooka, honestly, and just the fact that when we lived within Bazooka, we probably utilized like 15% of what that was actually capable of. There was a lot going on, but overall, I mean, you can't argue with the fact that you can build a high level brokerage with Revenova.
I think on that point, it's really useful for larger brokerages. Just at scale, if you have an IT department, they can get into the weeds on the workflows and the automation that it offers. As a startup, you don't necessarily have that. You've got, your founders and some people on your team, but you end up using a lot less of what's capable. The one thing I'll say on Revenova is they pass on a lot of their integration costs to you, so it can get pretty pricey pretty quick if you have a pretty big tech stack or use a lot of their tools. So that was one thing that I looked at that I thought and said, for us and our size, where we're going, I just don't think it really makes sense. But I do know some larger brokerages that are moving over to Revenova, and it does have a lot to offer. As far as aesthetics go, I kind of feel like it's like TypeScript all over the place, a little bit busy, but incredibly robust in terms of how you can function and what you can do.
Yeah, the number of integrations they had was great. Like we're kind of getting into the tier where we felt like we couldn't necessarily go wrong with some of these ones that we're talking about. Like they have a great team over there too. They have some good features. They have the book and now features. You can put out load offers to carriers that maybe not are in your system, so you can actually grow your network through automation, which I thought was great. Differentiated with this too is that pesos were supported within their system. With us being in Mexico, cross-border being a big part, that was something we definitely weighed out. Carrier ratings, you could rate a carrier within the system, which we thought was great. The customer and carrier portals were both branded, so you have that. You could do quotes and build loads, check invoicing, and they have reporting within there for your customers. And again, for us, it just came down to the other options looking like they were more exactly what we were looking for. But you can't go wrong with Revenova, and we definitely thought fondly of it. We have to take pricing into account as well. And like you said, as you kind of get all those integrations in, the price tag started to go up for us. So we ultimately went a different route, but Revenova was a good one. The next one up was Turvo. Turvo's picking up a lot of steam. This was a really cool platform. I'm not going to lie. It was definitely in our top choices. There were some things that just ultimately didn't get over the finish line for us personally, but the highway integration was probably the most sophisticated of all the platforms that we looked at. They're integrated with most factors, if that's a factor to you personally. The portals for carrier and customer look great, and they're also branded. They had internal internal platform communication within there, like messaging back and forth between employees, which I thought was really cool. That was unique to them. No truck matching. Again, that just seems to be something that just really isn't out there outside of proprietary systems. They have their own app for tracking, which is pretty cool. Integrations are all there. They have waterfall capabilities. And cross-border looked great, includes Tableau for reporting. So they checked off a ton of what we were looking for. But ultimately, it came down to like more of a pricing issue for us. What was unique to Turvo was they charge a very small percentage of your revenue monthly. And I guess I just couldn't get, I don't know what it was, but I couldn't get my mind wrapped around that
No.
it shouldn't matter how much you're charging out. If you have a tight month margin wise, but you're billing out a lot, your cost goes up. I just being fully transparent, I just couldn't get behind that.
No, I couldn't either. Maybe it's the place we're at as a company and thinking about how we scale that. And maybe that's our next 5-year journey and how it just didn't really make sense. I didn't like that either. I thought it was a little bit prohibitive.
Yeah. But they had an awesome team, and they really had their stuff together from just the demo perspective and following up and just the structure they had. So it's no surprise that they're very up and coming and growing fast, and really good platform. And to be fair, we do have some friends at other brokerages who are on Turvo, and they speak highly of it. So props to Turvo. Just wasn't a fit for us. Next up was a more of an up and coming one that we were very close on. They were definitely in the running. And that's Movement, based out of Chicago. Made some changes recently in how they're approaching the platform and adding a lot of features in, and I thought they were really cool. The platform aesthetically might be the best that we saw. Very sleek and cool. They even offer like a free account if you only have, I believe, 1 or 2 people. You can utilize the platform. Now, it doesn't have all the features, but you can get on there and check out the platform itself. Really cool. Highway had just got onboarded. They had good CRM features. Lane history was in there. For us, they didn't have cross-border reporting, which was a little bit of an issue, although the cross-border in general, because of the way their system set up, might have been the best system set up for that sort of feature, because they have jobs, and then they have legs that live underneath them. So you can have a master bill, and then like basically sub bills underneath them if you have multiple legs in a load. So very well thought out and unique within the industry, I'd say.
Yeah, a lot of things that were kind of coming soon on the roadmap, Canadian dollar, Mexican peso, that was on the roadmap. I want to say some of their integrations were coming like at the end of January, they had said, I think with like Highway and Trucker Tools. And but yeah, I mean, like, I feel like they're on their way to having like a highly customizable TMS, and they're doing the right things. I liked their thought and their plan on where they're planning on taking it as well. And yeah, I think overall it was pretty solid, but just didn't quite have the tools we needed to operate quickly and kind of some of the integrations and then some of the reporting in the back end.
Yeah, they just announced their highway integration like a week ago. So true to their word, they said they were going to get it done in Q1, and they did. So props to them. I know Greenscreens was supposed to be coming this month as well. So there's things they're adding to make them even more competitive, and they seem to be following through on it on the timeline they gave us.
I would also say they have some cool drayage capabilities that also kind of speaks to what you were talking about in terms of the different jobs and legs. And so if you are more of a drayage based brokerage, then it might be a TMS you take a look at.
And really good team too. We enjoyed our conversations with them. We met with them a couple times. Definitely one I would keep an eye on. It seems like they're up and coming, and again, really enjoyed like the way the platform looked and how it operated, and it just aesthetically and functionally worked really well. So Movement was definitely high up there for us. I think what it came down to for us was our choice, and then the next one were just a little further along in terms of development and had some of the same features, because the next one that we were very, very close on was WaveTMS, formerly Zoom, that we really enjoyed, like all the features they had personally. I don't know, you remember your thoughts on Wave?
I do. Again, a customizable portal that shows Hoplite on it for customers and carriers. I thought that was really cool. They have an app, because obviously the Zoom app used to be, or still is, what drivers use. So we had access to that as well, which is great. So if you're working with carriers on Zoom app or get them signed up, then you have a ton of easy ways to pull in paperwork, to get load updates, like super unique. Really aesthetically pleasing, a lot of cool tools, really easy to maneuver and function around. You want to get to information on a past shipment. You want to get information on a load, like just the access of that, less clicks, and just, I guess, just kind of an easier way to maneuver throughout the platform. I really liked it.
I did too. I remember thinking that I thought that their customer portal might have been the best in terms of like branding and everything you could do. If you integrate with say you have Greenscreens as a pricing partner and you integrate with that, you can offer your customers instant quoting on there. You just have to set up the logic, which I thought was really, really cool, that you could go in and quote a loadout. Potentially you like it, you go ahead and click accept, and it would automatically build it into the system. From a brokerage standpoint, not only from a professional standpoint, it makes you look like you run in a good outfit, through their infrastructure, what I thought was great. They did mass emails to carriers. quote storage, and they offer your hit rates, which I think is really important. You want to know, we've quoted, 1,000 quotes for this customer last year. How many did we actually win? And is this a good use of time or not? Are we making any progress month over month? So I thought that was really cool. The highway and Greenscreens integrations were phenomenal. Tracking capabilities internally, so they had their own tracking capabilities as well, outside of adding Macropoint or Four Kites, and they were integrated with a decent amount of factors. There were a couple that they weren't. The pricing was pretty flexible. So yeah, I mean, they were really close for us. I really liked Wave. We had a tough time making our final decision, but they were right there. Ultimately, just felt that our choice was a little more aligned to what we needed.
I remember LTL not being like a huge decider and kind of which way we went because we don't move a ton of it, but I don't think they had any kind of integrations with any LTL consolidators like Mercury Gate or Global Trans. But kind of a spoiler for talking about who we went with, but that was a nice addition to have, to be honest. Nice to have access to that to easily quote and maneuver because doing it outside of your TMS can be pretty time consuming, especially when you're talking about adding in all the reference numbers, information correctly into your TMS. And so I know Zoom didn't, or Wave did not have that, which was, again, not something that pushed over the edge, but it's just additional thing for us to say, well, I think it makes sense to go another direction.
At the end of the day, we started splitting hairs because we were pretty impressed with so many of the platforms that we demoed, but ultimately, we went with Tai. Tai's phenomenal, man. It's really good. It checks so many of the boxes of what we're looking for. So many of the features that the other ones have either does it a little bit better or it just has the culmination of, this platform has these three things and this one has these two that we really like, and they had most of them, all of them. So we really liked Tai. We're happy with our partnership. We are a HallPay as our factor. That's who we're using, and they have a solid integration with them, which was a big thing for us. The Greenscreens integration is like a module integration. So when you pull up Greenscreens within Tai, you're looking at physically what it looks like when you're on Greenscreens, which is like chef's kiss. That's what we're looking for. They do have integrations like you talked about with the LTL consolidators because they have such a LTL background. Which if that's something that your brokerage is heavy in, Tai is definitely the choice for LTL.
Ton of workflow automation that we have not even touched. I mean, there's a really cool tool as well that it's like a Tai virtual assistant or email assistant where you can have it respond to emails. It lives right within Tai's TMS, and essentially it can pull the information from a customer. Maybe it's a quote and just send it right back based on the margin percentage or flat rate that you set within that customer. So it sends a quote automatically back using Greenscreens data as well. Or, which is super cool, it can actually build a shipment for you. And it also you could create essentially, if you have a DL for your back office for your carrier invoices, you could set up that DL within Tai's system and have all the emails push over to their document processor. You can go to the document processor and you can easily split documents. So if you have a carrier invoice that has the POD and the rate count on it, and if you were doing it manually yourself, you could just with a few clicks remove that, and then it automatically matches it up to the shipment that it belongs to, and then you press a button and it's dropped in there already. And we haven't even started using that much, to be honest, because we're trying to just get the basics down, kind of put the blinders on purpose and start functioning really efficiently within the ways that we have to. And then from there, start branching out and using all these additional tools that are really going to cut down on a lot of time for us. But there's a lot of shiny objects in there that do a lot of cool things, but we're trying to be smart about when to tackle those.
Yep, and been a good supportive team with the integration so far as well. I give them props for that. They've been a good partner. They have some of the things that all these other platforms have, but they tend to do it better. Like they have a really good customer portal. Shiplify is a feature that is integrated into the platform already. So like if you have a facility you pull up, they're going to pull previous data and say, there's 95% of the time there's a lift gate needed here, and give you that insight without even having to reach out. So that sort of stuff's really cool. They've been a great choice for us. they're really integrated. I think they pride themselves on this, but they're integrated with like almost everyone, which was great for us with our other tech stack um, and just a good partner overall. So
I was gonna actually ask you probably the same thing you're kind of summarizing here, like going through all these TMSs. But what are some of the things that you learned about for somebody who's maybe looking at a new TMS? What are some of the things that you think they should look out for?
I mean, you're going to have to figure out exactly how your specific company operates and what features you value the most, because some of the ones that we had lower on our list might be perfect for another brokerage. I mean, it's tough to downplay. We talk about how like Alvys wasn't a perfect fit for us. It's still a really solid platform. And for the right brokerage, it's probably perfect. So, I think you have to look at your company and know yourself and know what features are most important, and then go through this process yourself to a degree. I hope our feedback, helps people who don't want to sit through 10 demos a little bit. I mean, we had countless notes on all of them, but that was our high level thoughts for what fit for us and what didn't work. But I think something we overlooked as not having so much background in this is like we didn't really handle a lot of the back office in previous roles. There was teams for that.
Mhm.
So if you're going to be handling the back office piece and handling the APAR and the invoicing, make sure you're going through that in your demo process to understand how that looks. I think that might be something that we had overlooked in our original choice, and then as we went through these demos, we didn't necessarily look extremely close. And luckily, Ty's got a very easy process to manage. But that's something, if you haven't done that before, you're probably not even thinking about it as much, and it's really important to your day to day.
I agree. I also think understanding kind of who the customer base is for each TMS. We didn't really ask that. If we found out that one specific TMS had majority of LTL or maybe cradle to grave style brokerages or maybe drayage carriers and brokerages, I mean, maybe nice to know just so we understand um, where maybe some of the look, a TMS is going to build more customized features based on the need of all of their customers. So if you're asking for something they don't have, but you're the only one asking, like, kind of good luck. It could be pretty costly for them to have to build that. But if you and all the other customers are asking for the same thing, then you're probably going to get it.
So that was the Great TMS Debate of late 2024 into 2025. We are glad to be with Tai. I think we couldn't have went wrong with like 6 choices, if I'm being honest. But it was really illuminating to see all the different features and what's out there. I would venture to guess that since most of these companies are relatively young, that just this is an emerging area in the industry where all these off the shelf TMS can compete with the proprietary stuff that these huge brokers have had. So it's pretty cool. I know we wouldn't have went wrong with a lot of the choices, and we didn't go wrong with our choice with Tai. We'll start banging through our other choices relatively quickly here and what our thought process was. But the next thing we thought was really important was having an idea what the market's doing for quoting. That's like, you have to have a basis of where you're at. And we've already talked about it a bit, but we went with Greenscreens. We've had them on the podcast before to chat. They have a fantastic product, great team. We love them as a partner, and they were a great choice for us. And I think for a few reasons, but from my perspective, I'll let you give your thoughts too. But the other option out there out of the gate was SONAR, and I've had SONAR in the past at stops, and
Mhm.
it is so in depth. If you want a deep dive on things, it is phenomenal for that. Sometimes you just want the high level, and for where we were at, from a price standpoint, from what we needed was just what's the market doing so we can quickly quote spot. And especially when you're starting up, you don't have contract freight most of the time. So it's just quickly, if I'm out and about and I need to fire off a quote, or my sales guys need to fire off a quote, what's the fastest, most efficient way to do that? Greenscreens was the choice. And I know that played a big factor in my head. What were your thoughts?
Their batch tool, along with that too, be able to for RFQ quoting was huge. I mean, we've quoted some really large bids, and we've been able to grab that and pull it. I mean, it's going to come down to um, your team and how big you are and what tools you really need. I think about our team. We've got some really, I mean, we average like 10 to 15 years experience for everybody on at our company. And we've got some really experienced people that they just know offhand whether that rate's close or accurate, and they can go in and they know the seasonality in different regions. So having a tool um, that's pretty robust is really useful, but we don't necessarily need like all the bells and whistles, if I'm being honest. And something like Sonar has a ton of bells and whistles. I mean, it's like you said, incredibly in depth and really cool. But when I used it, I half the time didn't know what I was really looking at and where to look until I had a friend help kind of put the blinders on for you and see what data you should be looking at.
And the other pricing elephant in the room is DAT and rate view, and obviously that's something most brokerages have. I would venture to say if they're large enough, but for us, like scaling up in a cost per seat versus the cost for the entire model was a big thing for us. Like if we started out with 5 employees, and if everyone wanted that rate insight, you're paying on a per seat basis, and I want to say it was like $250, $300 a seat to have that. Or you pay for Greenscreens, and it doesn't matter how many seats you have. It's just based on your volume and your stage if as a customer with them. So we liked the idea of the cost rising as the brokerage grew versus needing to pay for a seat when you bring someone in. And I thought that was a feather in Greenscreens cap.
Yeah, the other thing I would say I really liked is they created an algorithm for us once we had enough volume pushing through. That algorithm was a mix between our data as well as other brokerages or customers of theirs similar to size and us to kind of predict how we would buy and offer that up against the market rate. So essentially, you've got a market rate based on all the data they're consolidating, but then you also have a rate that's kind of customized to you. And I think it's been pretty good and pretty accurate. It's something good additional intel to have when we're kind of pricing. But when you look at DAT, they've got heat maps, they've got a lot of historical pricing. Their annual pricing might be a little bit more accurate right now. So yeah, I think it kind of came down to a mixture of those things, kind of what the product could do, but also the price. Also, I like where Greenscreens is going too, man. I mean, they're adding more and more features. I think they're being really smart about it. And they've got like a negotiation coach that gets more granular with decisions on what you should be doing. And I know they have a lot of analytics behind their quoting too, tracking their win percentage based on pickup or delivery states, margin percentage based off pickup and delivery states, compares that against the overall market as well. I know once we're larger, those tools are really going to come in handy when we want to get more granular.
Yeah, and newly acquired by Triumph, so we'll see what that does. But I'm pretty bullish on uh, having even more resources to continue to grow that out, more data to plug into the system. Like, really think that that's probably good for the platform, and happy with our partnership with them. Um, Next thing for us was compliance and onboarding. There were 3 big options that we felt like, and our familiarity with RMIS from the Coyote days pretty antiquated in my opinion. And my carrier packets was, as a few years ago, the first one to really rival them from my understanding anyways. And they were much cheaper than our choice. However, we felt like we couldn't mess this up as a young brokerage, not having a compliance team. Highway was our choice. It was much more expensive. However, I would make that choice 10 times out of 10. Sometimes you get what you pay for. It's been an awesome platform for us. The visibility you have into every carrier calling in, some of the features they continue to add every single time. I think, their founder, Jordan Graft, he's mentioned that like every time that someone pulls one over on them, their goal is to have a fix like as immediate as possible. And so they're constantly refining things. It's allowed carriers to onboard with us in like 5 minutes. Everyone's at this point likely on Highway. So when you onboard with a new broker, you just transfer all the information you've already inputted, sign the contract, and you're into the system. So I love the decision for us on that. They've been a very good partner as well. And, we're very happy with Highway. I would say that they've completely changed like really the compliance and onboarding game.
What's been the biggest game changer from your perspective, especially in being in the carrier side, carrier leadership, in terms of a compliance department like we used to have at Coyote that was ran by groups of people compared to this tool that's now like your compliance department?
Yeah, I mean, I think it offers so much more information at your fingertips to make that educated decision and to rule out bad actors from the beginning. Like if someone doesn't meet this criteria, then you look right away and you're like, oh no, sorry, we can't work with you. Or, you know, at Coyote, they had a pretty big compliance department, but it would get overwhelmed. And when things got busy, if someone onboarded, they're looking through all the documents, running the background information to say, should this carrier be allowed in or not? Um, this system does that. It automates it to a degree. And, for as big as Coyote was, I always felt like it wasn't to the compliance department detriment. They were working really hard, but the turnaround time on requests, sometimes they were just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And, that would get frustrating for a carrier working with a brokerage of that size to say, why is an onboarding taking a half hour? Like for us, it takes 5 minutes and we're a startup. That's pretty cool. And it really is a game changer. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Well, what if it was 6:30 p.m. and you're recovering a late load? And I mean, I remember sometimes not getting a response from compliance.
Yeah, or you're just who's on call and
Yeah.
are they able to get to a computer fast enough? And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's just it was a pain point in general, and they did the best they could with it, with what they had back then. But and I don't know, I don't have visibility into compliance operations at other large scale brokerages, but I think that was pretty eye opening for us to say, wow, like
Yeah.
you have all this data at your fingertips, and a carrier can onboard that quickly, and you can weed out the ones that are fraudulent or trying to run their game by sending an email from a very similar looking email, and you get the little highway add into your Outlook and it says not authorized. You're just like, oh great, like that's fraudulent. So there's a lot of checks and balances with the system.
Can you talk about their new load lock feature for those that might not know anything about Highway?
Yeah, the load lock feature, forgive me because I demoed it a little while ago, but they're really referencing like the telematics and the automated tracking on their trucks, and where are all their trucks at? Are they already committed to 4 or 5 loads and they only have 4 trucks? They're constantly checking from a compliance perspective for loads that are actually in transit for you, which I thought was cool. And there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just another feature they continue to add that is going to help keep your operation from any sort of claim or booking with a bad carrier or someone who's double brokering the load. Just a really cool feature.
Yeah, I remember them talking about if you had a pickup in Harrisburg, PA, going to Denver, Colorado, and they check the telematics of that carrier's equipment, and they see that there's actually only one carrier within, or one of their pieces of equipment within 400 miles of it, and there's no one actually tracking over there. Then they could call that out, and that maybe it was a double brokerage, maybe they overbooked, but that's a pretty cool feature, especially if you have the API integration and you're pulling in that data directly into Highway. Um, yeah, talk about a big change from what we were used to, with our past in terms of talk about carrier booking and understanding where drivers are going to be empty and how far is their deadhead and do they actually have a truck.
They also have a voice feature too that'll weed out numbers that are known to be fraudulent, so you can't even get through to you. So there's just a lot that they're adding. They continue to add more. That was a good choice for us. Highway's a great compliance platform. Can't recommend them enough, really. Tracking, we'll bang a few out quickly here. Tracking, we went with Macropoint. Everyone knows Macropoint at this point. You have Trucker Tools, Macropoint, Four Kites, Project 44. So there's a lot of options there. Macropoint worked well with our previous TMS, so we went that route, knowing that you can't really go wrong with any of them. From a capacity standpoint, Highway's a little underrated in that regard. You can use the Highway search function to find carriers that should be a solid lead there. But we're also a partner of GenLogs. I got the hat back here, but they're great. Ryan's team over there, he's built something that I think is really pretty revolutionary in terms of like the visibility and to actually know in depth what an operation of a carrier or shipper is, just based on the data that they're receiving. So GenLogs, great capacity platform, and also works great to understand a little bit more about the network of your shipper or prospective shipper. So works on 2 levels for us. Phone systems, we started out with the little one called Grasshopper for anyone who is looking for a phone system that works on your cell phone. We quickly outgrew that. They didn't work really with inbound calls to Mexico, and we have a good portion of our workforce in Mexico. So we're using RingCentral, which I know a lot of brokerages use as well. That's been a great professional look for us and keeps everyone on one platform. And then I guess the last thing we'll chat on before getting into what we learned a little bit was, we do have DAT and truck stop from a load board perspective, but I wanted to touch on Cargado for what we are as a cross border brokerage and what Matt Silver's done over there. Great team, continuing to grow, sorely needed product. We're happily a quick adopter and partner of them.
Bringing capacity to both borders now is southern and northern is pretty phenomenal, and it's just a great way to connect with carriers otherwise maybe you wouldn't. And there's a lot there. I want to talk about that in a little bit, but there's a lot that I think they can do with this and where they can take this platform beyond just sourcing capacity.
Nothing but positive things to say about Cargado and their team and what they've offered. They created this marketplace that makes connections for finding reputable carriers to move cross border relatively easy. So props to them. Again, proud partner of ours. And last little shine I'll give is to the Bitfreighter team. We haven't necessarily utilized a lot of EDI tendering yet, but we are set up with them when the time comes. And their live quote function as well is something we'll be looking into as we continue to grow, which is bringing us on to our kind of next point, which is good. Is like we're trying to scale up with need versus want. And we're talking about where we're at now. What was needed? What could have waited? What really helped? I don't know if you have thoughts on some of those.
Oh, I think that takes us back to probably a year and a couple of months ago when we were trying to decide what to do and what to spend money on. We went with a cargo insurance platform kind of early on that we put a large deposit down on. We ended up using that deposit up over time, but I think that was one where like probably didn't need to do because we thought we'd have the need, but we didn't until we started getting the freight. And that kind of came slow to have kind of high value freight. So that was one where maybe we didn't need to spend the money on that platform out the gate. Can you think of any others like that?
Not a ton. I think we did a pretty good job of like establishing what was going to be needed and like a nice basis for growth. Now, obviously, we have aspirations of growing relatively large, so you want to put that things in place for a smaller operation. Do they need all these platforms? Probably not. They're good to have, but you could get by with doing a handful of them until you continue to grow. But for us, they've all had ROI, and I think we're proud of that. The PEO was something we didn't know necessarily about and I think that's been very fruitful because if we were trying to manage being compliant in 5 different states, and just handling the health insurance ourselves, that's been really helpful for scaling. So we definitely recommend that to look into a PEO if you're going to be hiring in multiple states.
Yeah, I think we thought about the people we brought on early on wanting to be able to have all this tech at their fingertips and to really take off and move quick. I think we allowed that, which is probably why I think at least helped us on our trajectory of our growth and what we were able to do. We didn't have carrier reps bogged down, not being able to use posting platforms or getting insights on rates. From lead generation tools as well, we didn't short stick on that, which is helpful. Having robust TMS system is obviously really helpful too. I mean, these things like it's a larger investment up front, especially as a bootstrapped brokerage. So you're taking a little bit of risk there, but we're also saying like, hey, salespeople, people we bring in, like we are investing in you to go out and do this. And so let's leverage the tech that we have. And the idea is that that's going to help us scale quicker and get to those goals quicker. So luckily we were able to do that. But if you're not in that position, I think you got to be really mindful and thoughtful about who you're going to bring on early and just trying to, again, not be so, look at all the shiny objects around you and just like choose all of them or pick the ones that you don't need. It's a hard decision.
Yeah, it is. It's calculated risk.
Mm.
Do you bring on a platform and take on the added overhead, knowing that it might not be fruitful for a month or two? But if you don't have it, do you fall behind your competition? Like they have things they can offer that maybe you can't. So I think we did a good job balancing it, but that's definitely a conversation, a debate for every potential business owner is like, how quickly do you add things? What is a need? What is a want? And really being honest with yourself about that, I think, is important. But if we could only start off with like three things, I think you need the TMS platform to be what fits well. You need, I would say, your compliance. For us, like, we didn't want some crazy claim to take us out of business or put us in a large hole. So I'm glad with the investment we made into Highway. And then pricing. I know Greenscreens has been such a great partner and very good insight to every opportunity we've had since day one. So I think those three are probably the most important in terms of getting started. And then last thing for us is our big our top three, our debate. So we both have three choices for really top emerging tech in the industry. We're going to do this like a draft at this point. So we'll go first overall, and we'll kind of scale down from there. We'll snake it. But in terms of all the stuff we saw, we just got back from Manifest. We've done so much research this year on new platforms and what's out there. What's your number one thing that you've seen you think this like emerging or has made things much easier or improved our industry? What would you go with number one?
Well, I'm going to draft GoodShip as my number one. And that's not a brokerage tool, it's a shipper tool. But it kind of, what it does is sits on top of your TMS, or I guess your system. And yeah, you can do a lot with it. You can run procurement events like mini bids and RFPs with bid analysis. It's all automated. It runs analytics on your network to help reduce spend, track your carrier's performance. It can do scorecarding, make recommendations to reduce costs. I mean, it's kind of like, I remember sitting in all these QBRs with customers, and we're trying to use the data that we have from our TMS to provide insights for them, but it's limited, right? You're essentially just providing them the only data you can based on the information that you have that you run with them. So if you run all their freight, that's great. You can do that at a high level. But if you're just running a portion of their freight, you can tell them better days to pick up on, where their accessorial costs are kind of blowing up, make recommendations on kind of some of the day-to-day and how to maybe properly schedule stuff, or where they should be routing their freight as well. And this is something that does it for the entire business. So I think it's super cool tool.
Great team too, sorely needed, I think, from that side. And like, we're not a shipper, obviously, but even dealing with like running a few bids through them, they made the process really pain-free from our perspective as a broker. So look, shippers are gonna have full visibility, and it's necessary for them to optimize their network. And if you're doing things the right way, like we feel like we are as a brokers, like I embrace that visibility that they get, and I think it helps the cream rise to the top. So man, Ryan Soskin's team's done a great job. There's a lot of former colleagues of ours over there too, which I'm sure paints them a little rosier, but like, it's a fantastic platform. Really, really cool what they're doing. So that's a great choice. My number one is, I'm always gushing about the platform, but man, GenLogs to me is just so cutting edge. I mean, I don't know anything else out there like it. The fact that you have these these cameras that are out there tracking to see where every truck's going, what like shippers' tendencies. You just have like unparalleled visibility into not only like the carrier side, but the shipper side too. You can walk into a meeting with the prospective customer and already have an understanding of maybe their potential largest needs. That's something I'd never, there are other platforms that give you insights into shippers, but seeing it visually and the ease of using the platform is pretty awesome. And then it operates on both sides, right? So you got a very nice new lane that you're going to be moving 5 times a day. And you're trying to find a carrier who actually needs it so that you can, mitigate some of that risk. You don't want 5 different carriers on those loads every day. You want 1 or 2. The build up of familiarity with the facilities. They need it regularly, so they're not going to necessarily fall off. You want to build a waterfall, and man, that platform has just done a fantastic job. Proud customer of theirs too, but I there's a reason they're getting so much hype right now. I just feel like they continue to add new features, more visibility, just a really cool platform, good team as well. GenLogs is my number one.
Going to my number 2, I'd say Cargado. So aside from just bringing the capacity to the market, and we'll talk about just Mexico, I think they're where they're taking it, where they want to go is awesome. So for those that don't really know with cross-border freight, if you're running like a through trailer, then you've got generally two carriers if you're using a B1 driver um, involved. If you not, you're kind of pushing across the border to a U.S. carrier's yard, then it'd be three drivers. For transload, then you're talking about two trailers, two different carriers, two drivers. You need a crossing carrier, and there are two. So you're talking about three drivers in that scenario. And there's a lot that happens at the border, in the Mexico border. So there's a ton of paperwork processes that go through. You have to have a DOTA created. You have to have a manifest across. That whole process has a need to be more transparent from both a broker perspective and a shipper perspective. And I think where they're taking this is being able to have that process live within Cargado as well. So you're talking about finding capacity, booking carriers on lanes, communicating, and potentially even routing an entire shipment and having that transparency process within that. Most TMSs aren't built to be able to handle that and the different stops that you have in a cross border. I mean, you get to a yard at the border first, and then you're going to have potentially a crossing carrier pick it up or a B1 driver. Then you hit the border and you clear it, and then is it going to go to a transload facility, or is it going to go to a U.S. carrier's yard? Or if it's a B1 driver, it's going to continue on. If it's a southbound shipment, it stops at the customs broker facility. If it's cross docking, usually done there too. So there's just a lot of moves at the border for cross-border freight. And I have a feeling like they're, based on talking to them and seeing what they're doing, that there's so much more that they can do with this besides just being a safe place to find really good capacity and vetted capacity. So I'm really bullish on what Matt's doing over there. He understands this market incredibly well, better than most. And I think he has a really good idea of where they want to take this thing.
Yeah, he's been very open about past venture as well and what he learned. And like, I just see everything that their team's doing, how they're growing, how they're pacing. I mean, it's awesome. They've been built an awesome product. They've been super helpful anytime we've had like potential project, anything, super responsive. Yeah, I think the sky's the limit for Cargado, and it fits so perfectly into what we do. So yeah, great partner. My number two is there's a couple you could go with here, but Happy Robot is one that I'll bring up the first. It's just this voice AI, and there's so many very cool AI agent, AI automation that you can plug in and really add some efficiency to your operation. But man, some of the demos you see with the voice AI taking in calls, how they respond, different curveballs you can throw at it, and it doesn't even bat an eye. I just say I was kind of wowed for the first few demos, and there's a lot of other alternatives out there too that are working on this in the space too. Fleetworks is another one that I thought the demo was fantastic, but something about the tone, the way the agent talks, I think you'd be pretty hard pressed. I mean, you think you'd have to be on the phone for a little while to understand you're talking to AI. And I think of the implications that can make across a network. I mean, we're looking for a potential after-hours solution. Instead of us taking the calls ourselves, can we have something that can take in information and make decisions and relay to the proper party to potentially get an answer for someone without someone having to wake up at 2 a.m. So like that to me has some pretty far-reaching implications in our industry if they can keep fine-tuning it. And I want to give Javi and Pablo props because I think what they've built's really cool. And I'm excited to see where their platform goes next and some of the other ones out there. But that's a really cool one. And I think they've done a great job.
And then on a similar note, my number three would be Levity. When I say similar, what Euro's building or has built over there has some phone AI as well as just a lot of AI flows, a lot of automation with that. So that could be pulling documentation into your TMS. It could be responding or quoting. It's really customizable to see the different workflows that you can create with his AI tool. So I'm excited to see where that kind of goes. I mentioned load building and appointment scheduling as well as on that list, but I'm bullish on him. I'd like to see what Levity looks like in 3, 4, or 5 years from now.
Yeah, it's tough to keep them all straight, all the different options popping up. And I know our demo with Levity Giro at Manifest was really eye-opening, some pretty cool workflows, and they make it very aesthetically easy to set some of this stuff up. And it continues to learn as you run through those workflows in your organization. So really cool. I know Vuma does something somewhat similar as well. We still haven't demoed them, but chatted with them at Manifest as well. There's just a lot of emerging players in the AI realm that are really going to shake up the industry. Whoever can prove that they're the number one and they can handle all these different features and all these different tasks without issue, I think someone's going to weed themselves out eventually. There's a lot of options, but the cream will rise with that. My third and last one, I'm not going to go into them too deep because I already have a bunch of times, but Highway, I think, has just been a game changer in general. They changed kind of the visibility, compliance, and risk mitigation. So they're my number three. I think they're fantastic, and I've talked about their platform ad nauseum at this point, but, pretty fantastic, and they've been a good partner for us.
Good stuff, man.
So a lot to chew on when it comes to your tech stack, and there's so many different things out there to help optimize and grow your customers and make things more efficient and find the best carrier. And how do you prioritize all this? Short answer is you have to look at your own operation and figure out what's most important for you. I am happy with all of our partners. I think we've picked fantastic ones. And the great thing is most of them work pretty seamlessly together, which has made things much easier on us. There's a lot to choose from out there. So hopefully some of our feedback helps anyone in a similar position to get a little insight before they start diving into their choices.
Yeah. Do your research and over research, if anything. I think in a few areas, maybe we fell short of really diving in deeper than we could have, but that'd be my one learning experience.
Yeah. Probably 10 more we could talk about as well, but we'll get to that on another episode, some of the mistakes we've made, but generally pretty happy with where we're at and the partners we've chosen. So if any of these you'd like more information, reach out to us. We'd love to give feedback. We love to help other people who are in similar positions because other people have helped us along the way, and we really appreciate that. We like to pay it forward. So reach out if you have any questions on any of them. We're happy to be as open as possible. But that is episode 5 of the Ramp Up, Talking Tech Stack. We'll be back in episode 6 with a very special guest. Appreciate you guys listening.
Ramp up, never hit the brakes.